I've been married to Lily for 20 years now. Our story began back in high school when I was a junior, and she was a senior. Somehow, we made a long-distance relationship work during her first 2 years of college while I wrapped up high school and spent a year at community college. After that, we both ended up attending school in the same city for a year before deciding to move in together. We tied the knot the summer after I graduated college. For most of those 2 decades, things had been really good. But recently, everything fell apart. I filed for divorce after learning she'd been sleeping with multiple men during those 2 years we were long distance. It all came to a head just after Christmas. We met up with some of her old college friends to catch up, have dinner, and hang out. At one point during the evening, Lily mentioned that we first met in high school, though she didn't clarify that we had been dating. One of her former roommates chimed in, saying it was wild that we met in high school, had some crazy college years, and still managed to end up together. I played along and joked that I wasn't sure Lily had been as wild as I was. That's when her roommate started to share a story, but Lily quickly cut her off, saying the topic made her uncomfortable. That moment sent alarm bells ringing in my head. To clear things up, I pointed out that we'd started dating in high school and had stayed together all through her college years. The mood in the room shifted instantly. Her friends went quiet, and the rest of the evening felt awkward. As we were leaving, one of her friends pulled me aside and suggested I have a heart-to-heart with Lily about her college days. On the drive home, I brought it up, but Lily brushed me off. I told her it was important to be honest with me, but she waved it away like it was nothing. When we got home, I told her I'd stay at my brother's place until she was ready to talk. The next day, she came over and confessed everything. During her first 2 years of college, she'd slept with multiple men. She claimed it didn't seem like a big deal back then because we were long distance, and she hadn't been sure our high school romance would last. When I pressed for details, she admitted to being with at least 10 men. 3 of them were guys she introduced me to as friends during my weekend visits, and one of them she was still in contact with to this day. That was the breaking point for me. I told her I wanted a divorce and started the paperwork right after New Year's. Both her family and part of mine have been urging me to reconsider, saying I shouldn't end our marriage over what they're calling a few youthful mistakes. But to me, this isn't just a mistake, it's years of betrayal. The fact that she kept relationships with some of these men right under my nose is a level of disrespect I can't stomach. We have 2 kids, 17 and 19. And I think they'll understand why I need to leave. But I can't help questioning myself sometimes. Am I overreacting? It feels like I'm losing my mind with so many people telling me to just let it go, to forgive and forget. To address a few common points people have raised, first, the reason I'm sharing this is that Lily and some of her friends keep insisting it's normal to sleep with other people in a long-distance relationship. They act like I'm the weird one for staying faithful. I've been feeling gaslit and needed an outside perspective. Since our state has a mandatory waiting period before the divorce is finalized, I thought it made sense to seek some insight while I wait. From what I've gathered, it seems a small minority do think it's normal to sleep around in these situations, but most people don't agree. Second, during those 2 years, we saw each other a couple of weekends every month. I lived about 3 hours away, so while it was technically long distance, it wasn't like we were across the country from each other. We didn't go months without seeing each other. As for the guys she slept with, 3 of them were at parties I attended during my visits. We never talked about me being her boyfriend, so I don't even know if they realized I existed. One of them ended up marrying a mutual friend of ours from college. He's been in our lives for years, not some hidden contact. After I confronted Lily, I reached out to him. He claimed he hadn't known about our relationship back then and even blocked her on social media afterward. Finally, some folks have asked how her roommates didn't realize the timeline didn't add up during our wedding. The truth is, we had a small, intimate ceremony with close family in Texas and a larger celebration with friends on the East Coast. It wasn't a traditional reception where everyone told stories about our relationship. Her roommates probably just assumed we started dating after moving to the same city. At first, I was open to the idea of trying therapy or working on saving our marriage. But Lily's repeated insistence that what she did was normal, and that I was blowing things out of proportion became too much to bear. The only time she showed any real remorse or even suggested reconciliation was when I began filing for divorce. And in just the past week, she's gone back to claiming she was right and that I'm overreacting. Honestly, it makes me feel like I'm losing my grip on reality, like I'm being gaslit into believing this isn't the massive betrayal it clearly is. Some people have asked if I plan to get paternity tests for our kids. The answer is no, unless they ask for it themselves. I've never doubted they're biologically mine, but even if they weren't, it wouldn't change how much I love them. They've been my children for 19 years, and that bond means everything to me. My wife's actions don't affect my feelings for them. They're my world, and nothing can undo that. Back when Lily and I were dating, we were absolutely in an exclusive relationship. Dating norms were a bit different 2 decades ago, and exclusivity was just the default assumption unless explicitly stated otherwise. Before she left for college, we had a long, emotional conversation about whether we'd try to maintain a long-distance relationship. She was the one who insisted we stay together, and even joked that her dad would hunt me down if I ever so much as looked at another girl. I remember when my senior prom rolled around, she couldn't come, and when I mentioned going with a female friend as just friends, she got really upset. In the end, I skipped prom altogether and spent the evening with her instead. Although we never used the word exclusive, everything about our relationship and those conversations made it crystal clear we were committed to each other. After taking advice from some people, I reached out to the friend who had encouraged me to talk to Lily. She revealed that 10 men was likely a low estimate, and also mentioned there had been at least one pregnancy scare I hadn't known about. For me, though, it's not about the number of guys. What cuts the deepest is Lily's refusal to acknowledge how much her actions hurt me. It's the lack of accountability and understanding that's been the hardest to process. Lily and I have started seeing a couples counselor, and we've gone to 3 sessions so far. While I don't believe therapy will save our marriage, it has helped me communicate my feelings more effectively. It's also given Lily a glimpse into my perspective, which is something she'd never really considered before. Most importantly, the sessions have put us on a path to co-parent more effectively once the divorce is finalized. Through counseling and conversations with 2 of her former roommates, I've learned more about her college years. It turns out her roommates had suspicions about her cheating back then. They found the situation odd but didn't press the issue because Lily told them we both had our wild phases in college and resolved it before getting married. One of her roommates, the one who pulled me aside recently, admitted she felt uneasy that Lily hadn't come clean to me. She wanted to make sure I knew the truth. Looking back, it's clear that Lily never truly understood the gravity of her betrayal. While counseling has helped us communicate better, it's only reinforced my decision to proceed with the divorce. My priority now is ensuring a stable and supportive environment for our kids. They need to see that honesty and respect are the foundation of any healthy relationship. Ending my marriage is a way to uphold those values, even if it's painful. As for being introduced to the men she'd been with, Lily claims it wasn't intentional. One of those men ended up dating and marrying a mutual college friend, and he's the one she stayed in contact with. She insists it wasn't a secret affair, he was just part of our social circle. In other cases, during therapy, she initially tried to blame me for wanting to attend parties where these men happened to be. Later, she admitted it was wrong to put me in those situations. When I visited her in college, she had usually planned for us to hang out in her room or spend time alone. But since I'd never experienced the party scene in high school or community college, I was eager to dive into that part of college life. She says she didn't expect me to meet those men at the parties, but when it happened, she felt she had no choice but to introduce me. While that doesn't make the situation any easier to stomach, it wasn't as deliberate as parading me in front of them. Most of our therapy sessions have focused on why I see this as such a deep betrayal, while Lily initially didn't. She's argued that these encounters weren't romantic, most were one-night stands or friends with benefits, and therefore didn't seem like a big deal to her at the time. Those were her words, not mine. From my perspective, we never agreed this kind of behavior was okay. In fact, she actively discouraged me from doing anything remotely similar. Over time, and through a lot of tough conversations, she started to admit that it was a breach of trust. The progress we've made in therapy has helped us shift from constant fighting to more honest and productive discussions. That gives me some hope for our co-parenting relationship moving forward. But when it comes to our marriage, I've remained resolute about the divorce, and here's why. 2 major revelations solidified my decision to leave. The first was tied to a rough patch we went through about 10 years ago, when intimacy between us hit a serious low for 2 years. Lily had mentioned back then that our sex life was feeling stale, so I tried to spice things up with role play and introducing mild sex toys. What I didn't know was that she had been carrying unresolved feelings about certain sexual experiences from college, things she wasn't comfortable sharing with me. It turned out she wanted me to recreate those experiences, but when I did, it triggered feelings of awkwardness and guilt for her because it brought back memories of other men. The fact that those supposedly meaningless experiences still cast a shadow over our marriage shows they mattered more to her than she admits. The second revelation came after the pandemic, when she admitted to flirting with coworkers during business trips. While she insists she never slept with anyone, she did confess to going on a date with a male coworker. That was the breaking point for me. This wasn't just about the past anymore, it was proof that she was still capable of betraying my trust. Between her actions in college and this recent behavior, I could no longer see a future with her. These realizations have made it clear that our marriage was built on a shaky foundation of deceit and unresolved issues. I've come to understand that I need to prioritize my own well-being and integrity. Ending the marriage is the only path forward. More importantly, I want to show my kids that honesty and respect are non-negotiable in a relationship. It's a lesson I owe to them, and to myself. We've already told our kids about the divorce. We explained it as the result of bad decisions made during college, ones we couldn't move past. My 19-year-old, who's currently in college, asked me point-blank if I had ever cheated on their mother during her college years. Lily became visibly shaken but admitted that she was the one who had been unfaithful. We decided to keep the specifics between us, sparing the kids from the details. I reassured them that both of us would continue to be there for them, and that we're both in therapy to ensure we handle this transition in the best way possible. I also let them know that if they ever wanted to talk about it, with us or with a therapist, I would fully support them. The divorce process has been relatively smooth so far. We've been working with a mediator to sort out the logistics. Thankfully, we're both financially stable, have no significant debts, and our kids are old enough that custody arrangements aren't a major issue. The past few months have been incredibly challenging, but I'm in a better place now. Sharing my story previously and seeing the feedback validated my feelings and pushed me to try counseling with Lily. While it hasn't saved our marriage, it's helped us communicate better and co-parent more effectively. At this point, I've accepted that Lily likely cheated more than she's admitted. Considering the dead bedroom phase years ago and the recent date with a coworker, I've come to terms with the probability that infidelity has been a recurring issue in our marriage. I don't need every detail to make my decision. I already know enough to be confident that divorce is the right path for me. Whether the betrayals were confined to college or extended beyond that doesn't matter anymore. Adding more specifics won't change the outcome. Now that the divorce is finalized, everything feels more settled. The process was mostly uncontested and amicable, with only a few minor disagreements. Our lawyers worked through mediation, and a judge signed off on it a few weeks ago. Splitting our assets was straightforward. We divided our retirement savings and investments evenly, and when it came to the house, Lily kept it since she was more attached to it than I was. The only real complication came with our 17-year-old. They insisted on living with me, as their relationship with Lily had taken a serious hit after everything came to light. At first, Lily pushed back and seemed ready to contest the arrangement. But our son stepped in and gave her an ultimatum: let him take some space for a few months to process and rebuild their relationship, or force him to live with her and risk him cutting her off entirely once he turned 18. I thought his approach was a little harsh, but it worked. Lily relented, and I was granted primary physical custody until his birthday later this year. I've been encouraging my son to keep an open mind about mending his relationship with Lily. I've reminded him that her mistakes from before he was born don't erase the 17 years she spent loving and caring for him. Thankfully, as the divorce progressed, he started spending more time with her, and I'm optimistic they'll work things out in time. This whole ordeal has been one of the hardest chapters of my life, but I've made peace with it. I'm moving forward and focusing on being the best father I can be for my kids. Lily and I managed to settle the financial aspects of the divorce without much conflict. She took out a mortgage to pay me for half the equity in the house and half the estimated value of the furniture. Splitting the rest of our belongings was surprisingly straightforward. My car and her car, my music gear and her hobby equipment, clothing, and personal items were easy to divide. For everything else, we agreed to sell it and split the profits. The process was made smoother by the fact that we had already documented most of our valuable items and electronics for an insurance rider we added to our home policy a few years back. Personally, life has been going well since the divorce. Both kids spend most of their time with me, which was my biggest concern throughout the separation. I've settled into a new house that I genuinely love. It's cozy, with a great backyard and a beautiful view of a nearby park. To top it off, I gave into a bit of a midlife crisis and traded in my old minivan for a sleek Lexus LC 500. Driving it feels like a small victory, a tangible reminder that I'm starting fresh. A surprising and uplifting moment came when a woman at work, someone I don't work closely with, invited me out for coffee. I was upfront with her, explaining that I'm not ready to date just yet. She was incredibly understanding and said she'd be happy to take a rain check whenever I'm ready. Her kindness and interest caught me off guard in the best way. She's funny, intelligent, and easy to talk to, and since we don't interact much at work, there's no added pressure or awkwardness. Despite the challenges of the past year, I'm feeling hopeful about what's ahead. The divorce process, while painful, validated my feelings and helped me find the strength to move forward. My bond with my kids remains strong, and I'm finally starting to see light at the end of this long, dark tunnel. This feels like the beginning of a new chapter, and I'm ready to embrace it. Lily and I are still attending couples counseling, though the focus has shifted. Instead of trying to repair our marriage, we're working on finding closure and ensuring we can co-parent effectively. These sessions have been instrumental in helping me process everything that's happened. They've also reinforced my belief that divorce was the right choice. Some of Lily's responses in therapy, like the fact that she started dating almost immediately after the divorce process began, confirmed what I'd already suspected, that the love we once shared had faded long before I filed. I've even noticed some subtle clues about her dating life. For instance, I'm fairly certain the coworker she insisted was just a friend was the one who dropped her off at a recent counseling session. The fact that this doesn't anger me is a clear sign that I had already checked out of the marriage. It's a strange realization, but one that brings me some peace. Healing from the betrayal will take time, but I feel like I'm making real progress. These last 4 months have been some of the hardest of my life, and I've cried more than I probably have in the last 20 years. But in the past month or so, I've genuinely started to feel good again, for the first time in a long while. I'm enjoying this newfound independence, staying busy, and focusing on helping my 17-year-old get ready for college in the fall. I'm even looking forward to that coffee date in a month or two. Life is moving forward, and for once, I feel optimistic about the future. A few months have passed since the divorce was finalized, and I've been finding my footing in this new phase of life. The transition from married to single has been both strange and liberating. For the first time in years, I feel like I'm in control of my life, and I'm determined to make the most of it. My new house is starting to feel like home, and I love the little touches I've added to make it my own. The kids have adjusted remarkably well to the new arrangement, and I'm incredibly grateful for their resilience. My relationship with my 17-year-old son has grown stronger during this time. His initial anger and disappointment toward his mother have softened, though he still prefers to spend most of his time with me. We've spent many evenings together working on his college applications and talking about his future. He's set his sights on a state university with a strong engineering program, and I couldn't be prouder of him. One Saturday afternoon, as my son and I sat in the backyard enjoying the warm sun, he brought up something that had clearly been on his mind. "Dad," he began hesitantly, "do you think Mom and I will ever get back to where we were?" His voice carried a mixture of uncertainty and hope. I paused for a moment, wanting to choose my words carefully. "I think it's possible," I said slowly. "But it'll take time, and it'll require both of you to be honest and open with each other. Your mom loves you, and I know she regrets the pain her actions caused. Healing, though, it's a process. It doesn't happen overnight." He nodded thoughtfully, his eyes fixed on the grass. "I just want things to be normal again," he said quietly. I placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "I get that," I replied gently. "It's okay to feel that way. Just remember, it's also okay to take things one step at a time." As we continued talking, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. Helping my son navigate his feelings and supporting him through this tough time had become one of my biggest priorities. It wasn't easy, but it was worth every effort. Meanwhile, my 19-year-old daughter was thriving at college. She'd adjusted to her new life with ease, balancing academics and extracurricular activities like a pro. On weekends, she'd often come home, and we'd spend time catching up on her latest adventures. She joined a few clubs and was excelling in her classes. Watching her manage it all with such grace and confidence made me proud, and maybe a little envious, considering how much I had struggled with that balance at her age. One weekend, during one of her visits, she surprised me with an unexpected question. "Dad, do you think you'll ever date again?" she asked, her eyes sparkling with curiosity. I chuckled, caught off guard. "I don't know," I admitted. "I'm not sure I'm ready for that yet, but who knows what the future holds." She gave me a knowing smile. "Well, if you do, just make sure she's nice and makes you happy," she said warmly. "I promise," I replied, feeling a warmth spread through my chest. Her support meant the world to me. As the weeks turned into months, I found myself settling into a routine. Work kept me busy during the weekdays, while weekends were filled with family activities and the occasional night out with friends. The woman from work who had asked me out for coffee remained a friendly presence. We chatted now and then, and while I still wasn't ready to jump into dating, it was comforting to know someone out there was interested. One evening, after a particularly long day, I decided to take a walk in the park. The setting sun bathed everything in a soft, golden glow, and the stillness of the lake offered a peaceful backdrop. As I strolled, I reflected on how far I'd come. The pain of betrayal was still there, but it no longer defined my life. I was moving forward, one step at a time, and for the first time in years, I felt hopeful about what lay ahead. Summer arrived, bringing with it a sense of renewal. My son received his acceptance letter to the state university he'd been aiming for, and we were over the moon with excitement. To celebrate, we planned a small backyard barbecue with close friends and family. My daughter eagerly helped organize everything, picking decorations and putting together the menu. By the time the day arrived, the backyard was buzzing with laughter, the smell of grilled food, and the chatter of loved ones. Lily arrived, looking slightly nervous but smiling warmly as she greeted everyone. I had invited her, hoping to keep things as normal as possible for the kids. Over the months, our interactions had become more civil, thanks in large part to counseling. We were learning to coexist for the sake of our children, and today was proof of that effort. As I flipped burgers at the grill, she approached me. "Hey, how are you holding up?" she asked, her tone cautious but kind. "I'm doing all right," I said with a small smile. "It's a big day for him. I'm glad you could make it." "Me too," she replied, glancing around at the guests. "It's good to see everyone coming together for him." Later in the evening, my son stood to give a heartfelt speech. He thanked everyone for their support, and expressed his gratitude for both his parents being there for him, despite everything. His words brought a lump to my throat, and I saw tears welling in Lily's eyes. It was a bittersweet moment, but it underscored the importance of the effort we'd made to remain amicable. After the guests had left, and the kids were busy cleaning up, Lily and I found ourselves alone on the patio. The air was cool, and stars were beginning to dot the night sky. We sat quietly for a while, each lost in thought. "You know," Lily finally said, breaking the silence, "I never imagined things would turn out this way. But I'm glad we can at least be civil for the kids." I nodded, staring up at the stars. "Me too," I replied. "It's what they deserve." "Yeah," I said, my eyes fixed on the stars. "It's been a long road, but I think we're getting there." Lily sighed, and her voice carried a mix of regret and acceptance. "I've been seeing someone," she said. "I wanted you to hear it from me before the kids find out." I nodded, not surprised. "I figured as much. I appreciate you telling me. How about you?" she asked, her tone softer now. "Anyone special in your life?" I thought for a moment about Amanda, the woman from work who'd shown interest in me. "Not yet," I said honestly. "I'm still figuring things out. But there's someone who might be worth getting to know better." She smiled, a genuine, warm smile. "You deserve to be happy, you know." "Thanks," I said, meeting her gaze. "You do too." We sat in silence for a while after that, sharing a quiet understanding. The wounds of the past hadn't completely healed, but we were both moving forward in our own ways. The chapter we had shared was over, and it was time to embrace what came next. As the days turned into weeks, I started feeling something I hadn't felt in years, a sense of excitement about the future. I took my son on a college tour, helping him settle into his new dorm and exploring the campus with him. Watching his independence and determination filled me with pride. He was ready to start his own journey, and I couldn't wait to see what he would accomplish. My daughter continued to thrive in college too. She called me often, sharing stories about her classes, her new friends, and the clubs she had joined. Her steady support had been a pillar of strength for me throughout this transition, and I made sure to tell her how much I appreciated her. At work, things were steady. I threw myself into new projects, and my colleagues started noticing the positive change in me. Amanda, the woman who had invited me for coffee months ago, began stopping by my office more often. Our conversations grew longer, and I found myself looking forward to her visits. Her sharp wit and easy warmth were refreshing, and I began to entertain the idea of saying yes to that coffee date. One Friday afternoon, as the workday was winding down, Amanda appeared at my office door with 2 cups of coffee in hand. "I thought you might need a pick-me-up," she said, handing me one. "Thanks, Amanda," I replied, feeling a smile tug at my lips. "This is just what I needed." She lingered for a moment, her eyes meeting mine. "I was thinking, maybe we could do this outside of work sometime. No pressure. Just a casual coffee." I hesitated briefly, then nodded. "I'd like that. How about next Saturday?" "That sounds perfect," I said, watching her smile widen. "Great," she said. "I'll see you then." As she walked away, I felt a flutter of anticipation. It wasn't just about the coffee, it was about the possibility of something new. That night, as I sat on my patio under a sky full of stars, I felt an unexpected sense of peace. The stormy past I had endured was finally giving way to a brighter future. My kids were thriving, and new opportunities were starting to emerge on the horizon. I knew there would be challenges ahead, but for the first time in a long while, I felt ready to face them. The journey ahead was uncertain, but it was filled with promise. With hope in my heart, and a renewed sense of purpose, I was ready to embrace whatever came next.